Hello, tonight I'm just outside Tenterden in the heart of horsey country. I'll be back here later. But first, here's Rachel Royce.
In these difficult economic times, many young people turn to their parents for help until they can afford to stand on their own 2 feet.
But what happens to those young people who don't have parents to turn to, who can't go home and who can't turn to the bank of mum and dad?
What happens to young people who've been in care for their childhood, in foster homes or children's homes? They can find themselves expected to live independently at 16, entering adult life alone.
Inside Out has been given exclusive access to a new survey looking at what actually happens to young people when they leave the care system. Its findings are extremely disturbing.
The research by the University of Kent, due to be published next year, shows these young people have a very high chance of becoming homeless. Almost 2 out of 3 at some time after leaving care will be without a home, a very different picture to the one painted by the government. The research includes in-depth information from more than 250 care leavers.
The highlights have been the sheer number that have been homeless, with 61% of those sampled being homeless, and of that 61%, 48% of them have been homeless for longer than 3 months.
Ashley O'Brien has been living rough on and around the streets of Canterbury for most of the last 4 years, since he was 19. He went into care when he was 8 years old after suffering abuse. We met him one evening begging in the town streets.
At the minute I'm basically out here on the streets fighting for survival. Sometimes it's that cold, no matter how much bedding you've got out here, you can't get warm, you can't get comfortable, so you have to walk about to keep warm, or otherwise you're going to freeze to death out here.
After spending his childhood in foster and children's homes, Ashley was deemed old enough to have a flat of his own when he was just 18. But Ashley wasn't ready and didn't cope.
I had a little part-time job, I couldn't afford to pay for anything, because my job just wasn't paying the money to pay the rent.
When was the last time you saw your social worker who was meant to look after you as a child in care?
18.
And what was the last conversation you had with that person? Do you remember? Were they like, right, come back if you need us, or anything like that?
No, all they said is they brought me a kettle, a toaster, knives and forks and some cutlery and a bit of food, and said, like, you know, we hope you get on.
Ashley's story is extreme, but sadly he's not alone. Ben King left care only to end up homeless. He took me to one of the places that he used to spend many dark nights, under the bridge to the Isle of Sheppey.
When I came out to foster home, they put me into what they call supported lodgings. Don't know if you know what that is. And then anyway, the woman gave up her supported lodgings. She didn't want to do it anymore. But I had a job at the time. I had a full-time job, and the people that was in charge of her came to me and said, "We found you a place in Ashford. You need to give up your job." Well, I didn't want to do that.
Rather than give up the job, Ben chose to sleep in his van. But the struggle of living like that meant he lost the job. He then spent 2 years in that terrible situation.
It was indescribable. Cold, wet, you know, like, because it's damp. It's not just the rainwater, it's damp as well. Indescribable, really. I can't put it into words. It was horrible. Something I'd never want to go there again.
Ben's now in a council flat and his life is slowly getting better, although he's still traumatised by his experience of living rough. According to the government, cases like Ben and Ashley's are the minority. They say almost 90% of care leavers are in suitable accommodation. So how can there be such a discrepancy between the government figures and those of the Kent research?
The government routinely collects data on care leavers, but unfortunately only goes up to the age of 19. For me, that's kind of akin to evaluating a wedding straight after the honeymoon, and it's far too early. But also the data that they collect is also performance indicators for local authorities. One of the key indicators in being in settled safe accommodation, where on the surface local authorities seem to be doing well, but the data that's published by the government is certainly not corresponding to mine.
What are the other findings in the survey?
Much has been confirmed from previous research with the amounts that have been exposed or found themselves caught up in the criminal justice system. We asked a question whether or not they had ever had sex for money, somewhere to stay, or drugs, and it was quite surprising the numbers that had admitted to having had sex for somewhere to stay.
Not all homeless care leavers end up sleeping on the streets. Many stay with friends, perhaps for a night or two, or sometimes weeks, so-called sofa surfing.
Often young women leaving care live with a boyfriend at a young age. Kayla Covey is 19 and living with her fiancé, a choice she's happy about. But she hasn't always had much choice. She moved in with a boyfriend at 16 to get away from bed and breakfast accommodation where she felt unsafe.
I first went to independent living in a B&B when I was 15.
In a B&B when you were 15, that's
Yes.
very young. What was that like?
At first I thought, oh, this is great, you know, I mean, when you're 15 you want that independence, so you like the fact that you're not with adults or anyone to sort of watch over you, but after a while you start to feel kind of vulnerable, and then there's obviously the sort of the comings and goings because it is a B&B, so you've got a lot of strangers around all the time, drug users and people like that.
Children in care are not supposed to enter the adult world unsupported. Local authorities have a duty of care to help them make that transition successfully and safely. So what's going wrong?
Well, I think there is an issue, to be absolutely candid, about councils talking to each other. So district and county councils, where one tier of authority has responsibility for housing and the other council, the county council, has responsibility for providing education, support, a social worker and other means. And we really need to make sure that as public agencies we're all talking to each other so that the young person doesn't fall through the net and become homeless.
I asked her what a person in Ashley's situation should do.
Well, he should write, if he has a problem and not getting any support, he should write to the leader of the council and ask to meet with him or her to find the support that's needed.
The government is aware of some of the problems facing care leavers. Recently they launched a care leavers charter which promises lifelong help. Scott King, Ben King's younger brother, was one of the people who helped them frame it. His own situation was that after returning to college at 21 to better himself, he struggled to pay his rent. When he went back to his former social workers for help, he didn't get it because of his age.
It was really unexpected because before they'd been so supportive. They'd done quite a lot for me, but as soon as I went back into education, I said, I've got part-time work and I need a little bit of a top-up because I've done the research. I can't claim benefits because I'm in full-time education. The college is paying for my travel, but there was no one to sort of pay the rent. And I paid for quite a bit myself. It was only the last little bit, but obviously it needed paying. And then I said, "Can you help me with that?" And they was like, first thing they said when I walked in the door was, "And you're a bit too old to be here."
The Care Leavers Charter was launched in the autumn by the Children's Minister. It makes many promises, but will those promises make a difference?
I think one of the problems that we've faced in the past is that too many people have assumed that the day a child leaves care that all their problems are over. But actually what they're doing is they're facing this cliff edge where that support drops away and they feel isolated and they don't know where to turn. So the Care Leavers Charter is to support them for a much longer period of time, and there are ways that is happening, and there are local authorities that are living up to their billing as supporters of care leavers to get them into adult life. I think the average age that a child now leaves home as a young person is the age of 25, so why should it be any different for a care leaver?
But it is different, Minister, isn't it? And we have found through this report and working with Kent University, they've done a survey which has 60% of care leavers facing homelessness at some time, around 40% of those for more than 3 months. Is the government aware of these high levels of homelessness amongst young people?
Yeah, I mean, and those are completely unacceptable figures, and local authorities need to do more to support children leaving care so that they don't end up in that dreadful situation.
At government and local level, there is a willingness to do something more for care leavers. The Charter offers lifelong support. Jenny Whittle has promised that Kent will sign up to it. But is it affordable?
I think it's possible, I'm not sure whether it's affordable, but having said that, if a care leaver who's undergone enormous trauma, instability and a dysfunctional childhood then has mental health issues at say 30, 35, 40, do we take away the safety net and say, sorry, you're not entitled to anything now? Because if we don't deal with those issues, many of them end up in prison, in prostitution, in drugs, alcohol, and then another agency will pick up the tab.
But will the new charter help Scott? He's still struggling to stay at college and pay for his flat. When he went to his social workers for help, his corporate parents, he felt let down.
You have parents and cousins and aunts and uncles. I literally have nothing. The only thing I have is you and your last resort, and I've tried every other option and now I've come to you. Not because I want to or because I'm a sponge, it's because as a parent you should be there for me, you know, when I need it.
And what about Ashley, the young man living on the streets of Canterbury? Will the charter change his life? If it can, he's not aware of it. No one has come to help him. He's already been in trouble and spent time in prison. He fears he may get locked up again. A bleak prospect.
I'm homeless, I have no money, no income. I keep getting arrested. They've told me basically if they catch me one more time begging, even if they don't see me asking people, hear me asking people, or even if I don't have a sign in front of me or no money out in front of me, they will then arrest me, charge me and take me to court and possibly imprisonment.
Social Services is supposed to provide a safety net for the needy in this country. But at the moment, one group, care leavers, are prone to falling through that net.
Rachel Royce reporting.